Hi, Kaytlin.
Hi, how are you? I'm
I'm good. How are you?
well, thanks. Excited to do this.
Excellent. I'm Natasha Carroll-Ferrari. I'm an estate planning attorney here in California. I also do the post-mortem administration through probate or trust administration. I'm super excited to be talking to Kaytlin Hall today. She is a financial planner. She's been with Gerber Kawasaki for 12 years. She has an MBA in financial planning. And she's a California native also. Kaytlin, you work with people who are all around the country. Is that right?
All around the country, California, but across the states.
Cool. Kaytlin and I met in March 2020, days before the world shut down. And we clicked and stayed in touch and have done a couple presentations. And I was really excited when we started talking about doing this particular one, which is about college planning, particularly when you've got minor kids and kind of what can you do in advance and all that. We started talking about different ideas, and this is where we landed. So I guess I'll start out by asking you a question, Kaytlin. What is it that you would suggest people do to help minor children plan for the future, plan for college, and all of that?
There's a couple different accounts that we'll talk about. The first one is the 529, which you're probably most familiar with. It's kind of the most popular, college savings vehicle. It is owned by an adult, so mom or dad or grandparent can own this account, and the child is the beneficiary. So the really I guess special thing about these 529s is that it is an investment account, so you can put money into this, and the money grows tax free, and everything is all the distributions are tax free if these funds are used for higher education, which is a big deal. I set up these accounts for my kids. I have a almost 3-year-old and 5-year-old, and if you think about how much time that money can be invested before they go to college, there's a lot of potential gains, and not having to pay taxes on those gains is huge. The other thing that I really like about 529s, and you'll probably kind of like this too as a estate planning attorney, is that these funds are not, they never become the funds of the child. So even when the beneficiary, your child, so in my case, one of my children, when they turn 18, they don't have access to these funds. They can't decide to take it out and buy a car. I will remain the owner on this account forever. So that's really important. And I think really special and a big deal for a lot of parents who maybe don't want an 18-year-old to have, access to a lot of money. So it is supposed to be used for higher education. One of the things I also really love about this account is that other people can contribute to it because college is expensive. I can run numbers, but that could be another presentation. But college is very expensive, and we get support from our family. So instead of birthday presents or Christmas gifts or holidays, I have uncles, I have aunts, my parents, grandparents, they will write a check for the college account. So, $20 here, $20 there. It goes into their college account, it's invested, and it grows. And it's certainly a lot nicer than having 75 plastic trucks in our playroom. We don't need any more. The college money goes a lot further.
Yeah, I imagine though that your kids, like my kids, would also love to have 75 plastic trucks
They
as
do.
well.
Yeah.
Less appealing for us as parents. Let me ask you: does the 529 have to be used for college and for higher education?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's been a lot of changes actually over the past couple years of what is kind of considered higher education. What are these, expenses that you're able to use it for? So one thing that actually did change in 2017, there was the Tax Cuts Job Act, and this allowed 529 money. You can take out $10,000 a year to be used for private school tuition. So that would be K through 12, and that's a big deal too, being able to take out, 10,000 a year may not cover the cost of a full private school in Southern California, but it certainly does help. little bit of a, asterisk that we want to put here is that you can take those funds out, and you don't have to pay taxes or penalties on the federal level. But in California, you do have some taxes that you have to pay. So you have the state taxes, and you have a 2.5% sort of penalty that the state of California will charge for that $10,000 a year distribution for private school. So it's not, free like it would be for, college or a 4-year school or a trade school, but it does have, some tax advantages on that side also. Um, Kind of under that same umbrella, I guess, if you want to call it, is you can also take, this is recent. This is also, well, this was under the Secure Act, but you can now also take out 10,000. This is a one-time distribution, not this is a lifetime. Can take out 10,000 as a one-time deal to pay off student loans. So no taxes federally or for the state of California. Not all states, conform to this, but if you're in California and you have student loans and you want to take $10,000 distribution out of your 529, you can, to pay off those student loans, and you don't have to pay taxes on a federal or state level for California. So that's new, and that's kind of exciting. And I guess, and then that would be, I guess, still on the education side where you can put money if it's not being used just directly for college.
And I guess that sort of leads me to my next question, actually. So what happens if the money isn't used for education? So like if your kid gets is an athlete and doesn't go to college, or gets a full scholarship and doesn't actually need to use the money that's in there, like what happens with the money? What options are there?
It's not just gone. There's lots of options. So that's nice. There's a few different paths you can take. The one that most people hear about is, like, for example, I have 2 kids. If my oldest is an athlete, gets a full scholarship, I can change the beneficiary from my oldest to my youngest. So I can move those funds from one child to the next. So that's one option. It can be used for grad school, law school, medical school. So it can be used for other forms of education. But say everything is paid for, you don't need the money, nobody else needs it, what's the plan? You can take it out. You can take a distribution, but you do have to pay a 10% penalty plus taxes on the gains. So it's not free and clear, but it is still, you can still have access to it. It's not like it's gone and tied up forever for education. Something new also that happened this year is that if you have a 529, you can take 35,000 from that 529 and you can roll it over to a Roth IRA for your beneficiary, so for the child. So let's say my kids go to school, we have $35,000 left over. We can roll over that 35,000 into a Roth for him, which would be a dream, right? How many people have too much saved for college? Not many. And for a 22-year-old to have a Roth IRA with 35,000 is fantastic. But there are, again, kind of a few little rules that we have to follow there. The account had to be open for 15 years. It's not just like you can put money in today for someone who's 18 and, follow that 35,000 into a Roth. So it's new. It hasn't really been done yet, but it is exciting. It is another path, I guess, for the 529 money.
Yeah, that is very, very cool. I feel like whatever we can do to make sure that there's other options so that money doesn't feel like it's getting stuck somewhere,
Yeah.
and inaccessible. So we've talked a lot about 529s. I know that there's some questions that have come in, and I want to just tell everybody that we will do the questions at the very, very end.
Okay.
But the other thing, I don't know if you want to add anything else to the 529s, but I also wanted to ask you about Coverdell's, which
Yes.
I'm not sure if most people know about Coverdell's. And maybe you can talk about that. I don't know if you want to, yeah.
Yep. Let me jump in here. Coverdell is another form of education savings account. So it's similar to the 529. It is created for someone who's under 18. So same thing. It's, you're a beneficiary. Different with the Coverdell is that you can only contribute $2,000 a year into this account. So it's a much smaller cap. And I have my little notes here because the number keeps changing, but there are income limitations for Coverdell. So based off what you make also depends on if you even qualify for a Coverdell or not. So, I guess in the same sense as a 529, it's invested. The gains are tax-free if used for higher education, but the income restriction is a big deal. So if you're adjusted gross income is between 95,000 and 110,000 as an individual, which would make you, or 190,000 to 220 as a married couple, you have more of a phase out. You don't necessarily get to contribute the whole 2,000 a year. Once you hit that 110 number or that 220 number, you no longer qualify at all to make contributions into the Coverdell. So that's a little bit trickier because, income restrictions do apply, whereas the 529, you don't have those income restrictions. And the limit is also very low. If you think about saving for college and what you need for college, you probably need to be saving more than 2,000 a year, depending on your goals, if you want to, pay for full tuition. But it doesn't get you as far. It doesn't give you as much saving potential as it does with the 529. But it is a nice option also because you can use that for private school also.
Okay. Is there a reason why you would use a Coverdell versus a 529?
Maybe you want to do both. If you want the 529 specifically just to be for college, and then you want Coverdell to be for private education. You have a couple years that you're going to, maybe you're only going to pay for private high school, so you have some time to kind of save that money. That way you have enough for tuition for private high school. So you can do both. But most people usually go for the 529 over the Coverdell. In years past, people would do the 529 and the Coverdell because the 529 really was only used for college or higher education. And now, since the rules have changed and you can take a distribution from your 529, the Coverdell is not as popular.
That makes sense. Can you talk to me also about UTMAs, which I think some people also call UTMAs, but you and I have decided that they are UTMAs.
That's how I refer to them, but I don't think you can go wrong, right? Either way. So a UTMA is an account it's still an investment account. The rules are a little bit different also, maybe not as tax advantageous for education. But this is basically an account that you create for a minor. It is an investment account, but there's more flexibility. So with the UTMA, it can be used for education, but the child can also use it for a home, for a wedding, for a car. And there's no penalties or fees for taking the distributions out of it. But when the child does reach a certain age, they do have access to these funds. So, do you want a 20-year-old or a 25-year-old or an 18-year-old to, have access to this money? That's kind of a decision that the family and maybe a estate planning attorney make together. But it does give you more flexibility, but also the taxes aren't as advantageous. So you have, the first $1,250 of income. So that would be, any gains, capital gains. There's no taxes. The next one, the next $1,250 is taxed at the child's tax bracket. So if they're working and they do have income, then it's taxed at their rate. Any gains above that amount is taxed at the parent's tax bracket. So if it's a big enough account, you have it for longer, the tax advantages aren't there like they are with the other accounts. So it's nice that it has more flexibility, but if it's really education that you're looking for, then I feel like there might be some better alternatives than the UTMA.
That makes sense. I think the thing where this comes up the most for me as an estate planning attorney is people will say to me, okay, if I am dead by the time my kid is going to go off to college, I really want to make sure that they use my assets to go to college. And so they want to earmark and say like, well, they can have this amount of money, but they have to use it to go to college. And I generally dissuade people from doing things like that because I feel very strongly that we cannot predict the future. And so if there's a reason why, your child can't go to college, or if they have a medical emergency and they need the funds for that, usually most parents are not trying to hamstring their child. They're really trying to, make sure that they use it wisely. They use the money wisely. And so that's when I sort of direct people to some of these other alternatives in terms of, preparing for college savings and also figuring out a different way to do the estate plan. But it also leads me as an estate planning attorney to ask you the question, what happens in each one of these accounts? So with the 529s, the Coverdells, and with the UTMAs, if the adult or the parent dies before the child is of age, so over 18, what happens then?
hopefully it doesn't happen, right? That's what we're aiming for, but I guess it's better to prepare for the worst. With a 529, you have options to name if you have a trust, which hopefully you do because you've set one up and you've worked with Natasha, that you have your trust set up, and you can, with the 529, the trust can either own the 529 or they can be the successor owner. So that helps a lot. So even if the adult does pass away, whatever you have set up in your trust can still follow those same rules. So that's a big one. And you could, like I said, you could do it either way. The trust could own the 529 outright, or they could be the successor owner. I do think, and you probably would agree, that it's really important to name some sort of successor owner if it's just an individual who owns an account. Coverdell, not so much. Coverdell's not as flexible. Coverdell, you can't have a trust be the owner. You can't have the trust, be a successor, custodian on it. So it really is more of whoever the owner is. And then if that owner passes away, I guess that's where we would call someone like you to try to help to figure out what happens in sort of those tricky situations. And same thing with a UTMA, right? You can't have a trust be the owner of a UTMA. You don't name a successor a successor custodian on a UTMA because it is really for the child. So I think if you're really looking on like the kind of on the estate planning part, and if you want everything to fall into your trust in case something happens to you, then the 529 you can actually name the trust. So I don't want to say things would be less complicated, but it seems like things would be more clear as far as where the account would go upon a death of a parent.
Yeah, I think it would be more clear and also less complicated. So a lot of this is about avoiding courts and stuff like that. And so I agree with you that, if you can't have a successor owner on the account, or it's not going somewhere where the kid can access it, then you're talking about having to wait until they're 18 or getting a court order, both of which are probably not ideal.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Kaytlin.
Yeah. No, that was good. But I think you said we have a
We
couple
have some
questions, right?
questions.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and some of these might be specific enough that maybe I connect some people afterwards.
Okay.
Some of them might be good questions for now as well. So, one of the questions that we've got is if the parents have started early with a 529 and the projected value by the kids turn 18 is about 400,000. Is there any reason to look at another plan if they're assuming 4 years of $100,000 each?
So I think what you're saying, or what this person is asking, is like if you've saved early enough, you've kind of maxed out the 529, you don't need the money for any sort of higher education, where else maybe to save some money for your child. I love that. I love that you have too much money saved for college. That is wonderful. Things that I would probably talk to you about if we were in a meeting is, what are your goals? What type of, school are we looking for? Do you want to pay for grad school, because if that's the case, and, I would say continue with the 529. Are there other siblings that you might want to, consider adding money to this 529 for them in the future? If all of those answers are no, or this is it, this is all we want to do, then another option would be doing something like a UTMA. But Natasha, we were kind of touching on this before, that,
Mhm.
maybe we don't do it as the name of a child. If that's something that you're worried about, you could still be the owner of it and then name the child as the beneficiary, or your trust as the beneficiary, and sort of have that earmarked for your kid. So there are different paths we can go. It sort of depends on what your goals are too, and what you're looking for, and what you want to achieve, and what you want this extra money to be for your child. I hope that answers the question. It's a little specific, so.
And I think just to reiterate kind of what you just said too, is that, sometimes people say like, well, if I have an account in my kid's name, then what happens if I die? Well, if the account is in your kid's name, then it's not in your name. So you didn't get to control what happens to it. And your kid can't access it until they're 18, unless they, again, get a court order and whatnot. So it's another reason why, although some people want to, to open accounts for their kids early, and they think that's such a great thing, and it is, unless something goes amiss, and that's my job, is to think of all of these worst case scenarios that could apply. So Following up, there's another question about 529 distributions, and I think that's actually the question is about how the distributions work is actually I'm gonna riff on this a little bit. So how the question is, how specific or detailed do the plans regulate distribution? So if a parent says that they're spending money on tuition but they're
Mhm.
actually spending it on something else to get around the penalties and things like that. But I guess my question is also, how is the money distributed to,
Sure.
for the purposes of education?
Yeah, so they have to be qualified expenses for them to count towards the tax-free, withdrawals, and that's room and board, tuition, textbooks, materials. So it is a pretty vast, sort of category as what qualifies for, qualified expenses. What has to happen is when I've done distributions in the past, people will call in, I send the money back to their bank account, and then the family writes a check or pays the school from their account directly. What the parent wants to do is just keep a record of it. So, if they take out $10,000 from this 529 and they can prove that they have $10,000 in expenses, then you're all good. If you take out $10,000, but then you only have 7,000 of expenses and you use the remaining 3,000 for a car, a car is not considered a qualified expense. So if you get audited, then that's when you get yourself, and that's when then trouble can happen. CPAs are different. All CPAs are different. Some CPAs want to see the record of the expenses that you had. Some just want to make sure that you have it. But so I can't tell you exactly what your CPA is going to ask for, but that's basically what you need to prove in case you were to get audited, that you have the receipts and the proof that the numbers, match up together.
How, I guess, and this is sort of a around the like, how often are people audited, I guess, is the like, what are the chances that you could take money out and use it for something like a car instead and like get away with it, kind of thing?
Well, I don't know, but I know that's not what you're supposed to do. I
Yeah,
know that, that this money is used for education. If it's not, then you have to assume that you're going to have to pay taxes or penalties on it. That's not a game I'm going to play or recommend to my clients.
agreed. Agreed. As rule followers, I feel like that's not how that goes. But
That's not how that
yeah,
goes.
it's good to know though. So basically, like the family gets the money, they are expected to spend it on what they say they're spending it on. Keep receipts so that they can show actually we did spend that amount of money. Is it often that you see people taking out very specific amounts of like, hey, the tuition
Mhm.
costs, $729 per
Yeah.
credit, and I've got, X number, whatever it is. And so
Yeah.
they take out a very specific number like that. Is
Yep.
that often what you see as
That's
well?
Yeah, that's normal. I mean, you see all of it. Another thing too that I should mention before we kind of jump into this is sometimes you can pay the school directly. So the money doesn't necessarily have to hit your bank account depending on the school. Maybe they will accept the funds straight from the 529. So that kind of takes out a little bit of the middleman, but you would have to confirm with the college first to make sure that that's okay. But yeah, it could be very specific numbers. It could be it doesn't have to be all of it. If a deposit was $3,000, but then they need another 5,000 for tuition, so it's 8,000 that technically they could use. Maybe they only want to take out five because they want to make sure they can cover the remaining 3,000, or a grandparent's covering the remaining. So it doesn't have to be exactly even, but the numbers can vary, and just as long as you don't take out more than what you need on
Okay, that's
any
what I
sort
was
of
going to ask you. If
academic
you
year.
take out more than what you need, there's no mechanism to like return it if you haven't used it for the right. Like if they tell us the tuition is going to be $10,000, but actually it's $9,500. And then you have this extra 500 that in theory you could say, oh, well, I'm going to, find textbooks to
Sure.
buy
Right.
just so that I
Right.
use the $500.
Right.
Is that a better way to go about it than to say like, I have this extra $500. What do I do?
I
Like,
bel I believe you can do one rollover a year for the
okay.
529, so you could put the money back, but I would have to look into this a little bit more, so, don't take this as, complete information. I wanna look into a little more, but I believe that you can do, a rollover, and you can put the money back one time a year, and I believe you have 60 days to do it, but I would wanna confirm that. I know you can do that with retirement accounts. I believe you can with 529s, but I think the safer option would be wait till you get the bill and then take the distribution from the 529. So
That makes sense.
you're not guessing.
Got it.
In a
And
perfect
then
world, oh, sorry.
No. Say,
I would say a really nice strategy would be if you could put some of the tuition on a credit card, assuming you don't have credit card debt and you don't, everything is great. But if you could put the tuition on the credit card, get some travel points, and then pay off the credit card with the 529 money. So you're earning a plane ticket, along the way.
I like that. That's a good idea. Then you get to go away.
And you get to go away after paying for college for a little bit.
There's another follow-up question. Is the 529 plan auditing the reimbursements then, or are they auditing the CPA and your taxes?
So the
Or does it
529
depend?
The 529 will send you a tax form at the end of the year. So I don't know if anyone's taken retirement account distributions either prematurely or, as scheduled, or if you have investment accounts, you get 1099s. You get all these tax forms at the end of the year, or I guess in the beginning of the year. The 529 is going to send you a tax form. So
Okay.
you would have to submit that with your taxes when you do it with your CPA.
I see. Okay. Cool. This is super helpful. I'm going to pause for a second to see if there's any other questions that people want to submit. And either about the 529s or covered Ls or UTMAs or even anything estate planning related to that and all of that. We'll give it an extra couple seconds. Kaytlin, is there anything else that you'd like to, share with everyone? I guess about planning and maybe about some of the stuff that they can work with you on?
Yeah. College is a big one. So I work with a lot of families. That's, like you, I also have two boys. We're, kind of in it together in that sense. So I do work with a lot of families. College is always a big conversation for people. This past fall, we were going through the process of kindergarten, private school, public school tuition, and that kind of falls into the same idea of education planning. So I work with a lot of families there, and then, on the investment side. So I do full service financial planning, but I do say a lot of time that college planning and retirement planning kind of go hand in hand, because if you're not planning for college, if that's a goal that you have is to pay for their college, it's going to come close to the time that you're going to retire. Maybe not exactly, but within a couple of years, and you don't want to sacrifice one goal to fill another goal. So it does kind of encompass everything. And it's a lot. It's overwhelming. There's a lot of accounts. Things can change. I mean, things have changed, just this past year with, 529. So, that's why I'm here, to kind of keep up to date with this information and to be a resource for my clients when they do need me.
That's great. Thank you, Kaytlin.
Yeah.
There's a couple more questions that have come in while you were explaining
Okay.
that. So a couple 529 questions. I guess the first one I will ask is, does it matter what state your 529 is set up in?
That's a good question. It can. In California, it doesn't. So certain plans, certain states will have certain plans that you can use. And if you live in that state, then you may be able to get a deduction for your contribution. So that is important if you don't live in California. California does have a plan. It's with ScholarShare, but you don't get any sort of benefit for using ScholarShare versus using another company. So we can go through, California basically can use any state that they want, and anyone can use any state that they want. But for example, we know that there's a plan in Virginia. If you lived in Virginia and you participated in the Virginia plan, then you could get some sort of, tax deduction benefit. But for California, we don't.
And meaning that if a California resident uses a Virginia plan, there's no advantage to that.
No advantage or disadvantage.
Got it.
Same thing with if you are in California and you use the California plan. No, at least on the tax wise, investments, we feel like certain companies maybe have better investment options than others. So that's why we kind of look at certain plans. But tax wise, if you're looking at, using California's or Virginia's or New York's, if you're a California resident, tax wise, it doesn't matter.
Okay. And then related to that, the other question that was, does California recognize 529 tax breaks, or are the gains still state taxed? Which I think you answered towards the beginning, but if you don't mind reiterating.
Yeah. So if you're using it for higher education, so I'm not sure what exactly the question is, which path we're going down, but if it's used for higher education, so community college, 4-year college, grad school, California will recognize that any gains are all tax-free if used for higher education. So that's same thing for California and federal for higher education. For private school, that's different. So if that's the question, if you wanted to participate and take out the $10,000 a year to pay for K through 12 private school, then federally you don't have to pay taxes, but for California you do have to pay state taxes plus a 2.5% penalty.
Okay. Seeing no more questions,
Okay,
I just want to thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you explaining all of this because it's a lot and it can be overwhelming as a parent. And although I know a lot of this as an estate planning attorney, it is always helpful to have an expert, who knows more than I do and all the intricacies of how these things work. So I really appreciate you taking the time, Kaytlin.
yeah, it was fun. I like talking about college, so
Right. Why not?
thanks for having me.
If anybody wants to get in touch with either one of us, then I think we will have a way to do that through the links. But if you joined this live, then you got a link from me. And so I will follow up with you with my contact information and with Kaytlin's contact information. If you have any follow-ups, then please don't hesitate to reach out to either one of us.
Yeah. You know where to find me if you need me. So I'm happy to answer any of your questions. If you guys have more specific questions or what I can do to help, Natasha has all my information.
Great. Thank you so much,
Right.
Kaytlin.
Thanks.
Thanks. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.